By way of background, I'm a believer who used to be an atheist. I was an atheist, I guess, for the first 10 years of my adult life. And I became a believer. And the thing that changed me was the way I dealt with evidence. Specifically, I was a atheistic evolutionist, and as such I would give evolution every benefit of the doubt. So if there was a question that was difficult for evolutionists, I would just say, well, we'll eventually get the answer. So I had faith in the system. I wasn't open to things that would eliminate the possibility of an evolutionary, atheistic evolutionary existence. Now, what happened to me was I was questioned by a Bible believer, have I been fair with the evidence? And that's really what changed me, was the fact that I realized it was not the evidence that was lacking, it was my fairness with the evidence. And I would say that I believe that the fighting atheist here is suffering from the same problem. I don't think that he's got a deficient amount of information to dismiss the Bible offhand like that. Many of the qualifications he's looking for in prophecy, the Bible does indeed fulfill those things. I'm going to go through his questions real quick. I want to, when I get to the one about Jesus and the theory of relativity, I want to expand that quite a bit. But first, what would it take to convince you, that is a believer, to leave your faith? I would say if you can demonstrate that the accusations about the Bible being collusive would be pretty strong. I mean, if you can demonstrate that offhand, that Jesus, none of the things that pertain to Jesus actually happened, but you would have to go back and rewrite history. That's too late. You can't. That's too late. I mean, it's not my fault. Number two. Okay, I don't believe that most atheists aren't. Or I don't believe that most atheists are closed-minded. I don't think that's their main problem. I think probably the main problem is that they were disappointed in life. They're hurt in life, and they're blaming God. That's usually what it boils down to. But it's certainly not the thing that an atheist would verbalize, and maybe never even bring it out of the subconscious. 3, would you accept, or what would it take for me to accept if atheism were true? What proof? Of course, they'd have to disprove the Bible. Probably the other thing they'd have to do is convince me that the universe wasn't created. I know they're trying that awful hard. I've read Stephen Hawking's In the Brief History of Time, and those. I think he makes a quantum leap with his more or less a spontaneous creation in the stellar universe. The vacuum fluctuation is also, I think, pretty weak in the sense that you still have to account for the fact that energy and matter would take on a non-zero manifestation. That it does, in fact. I mean, it's a non-zero. So let's not speculate about the fact that, well, in a sense, it's actually zero. I think if you're a physicist or a cosmologist, you would understand what I'm talking about. 4, you say you would convert on the spot. You should have been converted a long time ago if that's the case, because the Bible's already lived up to the criteria that you were specifying. Okay, 5, verified, not contrived prophecies. Well, Daniel, for instance, named a particular king that wasn't even alive yet and said he would be the one that would give the Israelites the command to rebuild the city. he eventually did come onto the scene. Now, of course, we got to get into dating Daniel, which we don't have time to do in a 10-minute video, but let's take Jesus in the temple. Jesus said the temple would be destroyed. There's very good textual reasons. If you know the rules of engaging text, the hermeneutics of textual criticism, if something is not mentioned that's a major event, then we can conclude that the text was written before that major event happened, because it would have otherwise pertained, because it was such a major event. Specifically, the Pentecost is not mentioned in any of the Gospels. It's possible for people to write things within 50 days. I can write things instantly after they happen. 50 days is not an unreasonable time. All the Gospels were written within 50 days. Jesus predicted the temple would be destroyed in 70 AD. Well, he didn't give the date, but he said within the generation of the people that were hearing him. And it happened. Okay, unlikely and unique. Well, if you if you want to take, for instance, Jesus being crucified before they knew what crucifixion was, not having his bones broken, which they would have done because the Romans respected the Jewish laws. They had to take the body down. They didn't break his bones. Isaiah said that would have happened 700 years before. Prophesying against the king. Well, you need to read the book of Jeremiah. That's all he did. The Jews going back to Israel. I never met a single Jew. I know somebody that lived in Israel, an Israeli citizen. Nobody's saying they're going back there to help fulfill that prophecy. That's a mischaracterization of what's happening. Now, the point you make that could be is, yes, I mean, it's possible they could be colluding, but they're not aware. They're not even aware that they're doing that. So I think that your argument's pretty weak there. Prophecy must precede the event. I just took care of that with Jesus in the temple. It's not just a lone success. Well, the Bible is so replete with examples that it wouldn't be condemned by that criteria. Scientific foreknowledge. I'm going to get into that. Nature of prayer is getting yourself in line with God's will, not telling God what to do. Direct manifestation. Well, if you've ever seen the creation, that's your direct manifestation. You can't get more direct than that. Energy and matter cannot be created or destroyed. God has violated the first law of thermodynamics. Extraterrestrials. Well, let's suppose there are such a thing. When we meet them, we're going to have to share the gospel with them. Yes, I think you will find similar religions, because demons have the extra-dimensional mobility. Scientific foreknowledge. Well, Jesus spoke of the wind blowing where it will. You do not know where it's going, where it's coming from. That's what we call extreme dependence on initial conditions. This is a very modern concept in the area of Juliana sets and fractals. Extra-dimensionality is all over the Bible. The Bible is replete with extra-dimensionality. Jesus says that the Spirit would affect people, and we wouldn't know where it's coming from and where it's going. And in other words, the mechanism for extra-dimensional interference with our four dimensions is not going to be seen. We know, for instance, the Apostle says that the things that are seen are made up of things that are unseen. That certainly would qualify for a modern science. You could even get to something as specific as the 8-day circumcision, and now we know that that's the peak for vitamin K development and the blood clotting. There's so many things in the Bible I don't have written down. There's lots of things I would consider foreknowledge. I want to get to your specific example of E equals MC squared. If Jesus said that at the time, it would be gobbledygook. Okay, and then what would happen? You would have gobbledygook, and then when somebody found a relationship that was similar, you would say, oh well, they're just projecting that onto what Jesus said. I mean, what would Jesus say? Something like the work that can be done in an object is equal to a Homer times the running of light times the running of light. I mean, and besides, it might not be accurate. What if Jesus recited Newton, and then later on it was corrected by Einstein? Everybody would say, see, he's a false prophet. So, Einstein, we still don't have a theory of everything, so Jesus doesn't want to fall in that trap.